So, as of right now, my bike is sitting somewhere around 2,300 miles. That being said, in this time, I've come across a couple things that I personally would have liked to have known before I bought this motorcycle. Not a deal breaker, but I would have definitely liked to have been prepared for this. Some of those things include, well, I guess you could say there's three primary things, and that's one, its exclusiveness, two, its exhausts, and three is aftermarket parts. So, first off, you have your exclusiveness. Now, what I mean by that is when I said before that Triumph is a special lineage, it's definitely not something you see on every corner. It's not like Yamaha, Suzuki, uh, Honda. You don't see a dealership everywhere. Now, some dealerships are equipped to fix these things or they can do it, but for the most part, if you want to go to a Triumph dealership to deal with the Triumph problem, eh, that could become a little difficult. My nearest dealership, my nearest Triumph dealership, is roughly an hour and a half away from me. That being said, where I bought this bike, if I remember correctly, it's about 3 hours away from here. So I'm definitely not taking it back to the dealership. That being said, part of it beforehand, when I mentioned earlier, I mentioned at one point that you should probably think about doing your own maintenance with this motorcycle. You need to be relatively mechanically inclined to work with this thing because it is a very very sophisticated piece of technology. So first off, you should probably buy the cable that connects to your ECU so you can tune it. Now there have been some issues. Triumph has been said to have locked their ECU so that if you try to use a second hand or second party tool on it, it may end up breaking the ECU, which will render your bike completely useless. But some programs have been said not to do that. They have limited usability, but they do work and they can do some good things for your bike. One of them is Dealer Tool. So I know that they have some issues, like you cannot retune the butterfly valve yet, which is a problem too. But you can do other things like clearing off the engine or the maintenance wrench that appears at the bottom, or clearing up or diagnosing a check engine light. But without that program, you really can't do much of anything if your bike has a serious issue. That being said, you're going to pay a relatively high amount to get this thing serviced. When I said I did my own first 500-mile maintenance on it, which was my oil change and checking all that stuff and whatnot. Getting all that stuff squared away cost me about like 60 bucks, 60, 70 bucks. I've read that dealerships have charged anywhere above 150 to about 350, and your mileage will vary. Excuse me. Your mileage will vary, and what kind of deals you have with your dealership, if they like you or not, or what they can do. But it can become relatively costly to keep taking it to a dealership. So one thing that you might want to consider is buy some stands when you first buy this bike, or have some stands ready and be prepared to get your hands dirty a little bit. Work on it. It's your bike, and I'm sure most of the people who are looking to buy this have already worked on a bike before anyway. So the second problem I had with this was with my exhaust. At 700 miles, and I've heard people have had this issue earlier, but at 700 miles, my exhaust started acting funny. I was passing another bike, and I know when I first bought this bike, the first map Triumph sold with it, or gave with the bike itself, was made the engine or the exhaust sound kind of like an electric car. It wasn't all that impressive, and a lot of people kind of like, what is this kind of thing? That being said, as I was riding, I noticed that it got really loud really quickly. Like, it got noticeably different, and I was wondering why it was. It sounded good. I actually liked it. Made me kind of wish that I could turn off the butterfly valve completely, but no program could do that. That aside, as I drove down the line a little bit more, my check engine light popped, and tried to restart the bike. It still was showing up. Now the bike was functioning. It had entered limp home mode, which you'll read in your manual. But the bike was weird. It just sounded different. Well, took it to the dealership, that was an hour and a half away, and they diagnosed it. Now, it's a common problem that the butterfly valve, which is exposed off the top side or the top of the stock exhaust, is known to get rocks, lodged into it, which will prevent it from doing what it's supposed to do. Now, that problem, if it's not that, it's covered under warranty. If it is a rock that's in there, you're kind of out of luck and you're going to pay to get that thing fixed. Or you can do it yourself. Now that I've actually looked at it and I know that's a common problem, I can see where I'd have to where I could unjam it. So keep that in mind. But that being said, if you can get a replacement exhaust for it, it may be in your best interest to do it, but that kind of plays into problem 3. But back to the exhaust, there are really only 4 different choices you have at this very moment in time. The Aero exhaust, which is the one that Triumph is pushing with their bike, or they're trying to push you to buy or upgrade to with your motorcycle. The Austin Racing can, which is a slip-on. I've never heard it, and it's from Europe, so most of us in America may never even know what it's like, but it's about $700. By the way, the Aero is about $600, but plus installation. But you got your Austin Racing. You have a Two Brothers can, which is slip-on, which is being developed or is available, but it's kind of awkward the way it sits underneath the bike and kind of doesn't look all that interesting. And the Acropovic full system is being developed. Now, that Acropovic full exhaust is going to cost you somewhere around $3,000. I don't know who has that kind of money or anything. If you do, great on you, but I mean, that's kind of a lot of money. Now, TaylorMade has confirmed that they are developing something for the 2013. Probably something along their similar styles of just like making it a nice kind of smooth end of the body. I don't know. I've never seen it. But that being said, it would be nice to go ahead and get a new exhaust, but when we know other companies are going to make various slip-ons and full systems in the future, it may be better just to wait. That may be something you need to think about when you're doing this. But that's another problem. Aftermarket parts. This bike is new, and with any new bike, aftermarket parts are hard to find initially because, well, it's new. Not all 2012 parts fit on this motorcycle. Most don't. However, some companies, I'll use LSL as an example, their frame sliders are noted to fit on the 2013. Now, they don't say this on their website. You kind of have to call them and ask them if it does or does not, but the dealership that I went to was offering to buy them and install them for me because they had verified that they do fit on the 2013 Daytona. I'm sure a lot of parts or companies are currently working to get that stuff updated to make sure that all the stuff works, but there are a lot of parts from companies and whatnot that haven't been released because the bike is so new. That means you're either going to be running with stock, you're going to pay extra for stock or factory accessories with your bike that you may or may not want later, or you're going to run the risk of going without any of them for a while. That's on you, but that's something you need to also remember when you're buying this motorcycle. Some other issues that I've read that I personally haven't had an issue with are there have been coolant leaks from faulty manufacturing or building when your dealership builds your bike. There have been problems with that. I have been blessed to not have that issue yet. I've heard of oil leaking as well. There have been a couple recalls for the Street Triple and the Daytona, not much serious, primarily with the turn signals, which apparently are known to break because they're too stiff or something like that. But if yours breaks, you can probably take it in, they'll replace them since they're under recall. Now, I think the final little bit, and I know this isn't 3, but I just thought of it right now. The last thing about it is the motorcycle in and of itself. The Daytona 675 is a track weapon. That's really what it was designed to be. If you're riding it on the street, you're never going to really utilize what it was designed for. Well, legally anyway. The Street Triple does a much better job of being a, commuter motorcycle. For the average human being who isn't using it as a track weapon, the Street Triple may be a more suited bike to your needs. It's got a more upright seating position, it's a little bit more torquey apparently, and it's just an overall better daily rider. Now that's subjective. You could get on it and be like, man, I can't, I need my Super Sport. But keep that in mind as well, that the Street Triple and the Daytona are designed for 2 different locations. Not really a negative, but something that you might be a little thought provoking to you. But that being said, get off